All right, well, let's dive into the preterite tense. Now, when we're looking at the preterite tense, you must understand that we're talking about specifically the past tense. In the past tense, we have two different kinds. We have the preterite, which is this one, what we're going to talk about right now, and we also have the imperfect. So, when we first get into the preterite tense, we're going to talk about the forms first. Let's take a look. Okay, preterite or past tense. Now, just like the present tense has different verb endings for ER, for AR verbs, and ER, IR verbs, they have them for the preterite tense. Now, if you notice, the ER and IR verbs share the same endings. So any ER, IR verb will have those exact endings. AR verbs will have their own. Now, it's important to also note that when we're talking about this, we want to divide this section up into two pieces, kind of. All right? We have the irregulars here on the bottom. I'm going to draw a line. Okay? And this is the accent line. So everything above the line has an accent. Everything below it does not carry an accent. But when we're talking about the accents, it's important to also note that there's only two forms we're going to have it. The yo form and the el, ella, usted form on both sides. All irregulars do not carry an accent. All right, so let's look at the yo form. The yo form is a with an accent over the e. The nosotros form is amos, and if you notice, it's just like the one in, just like the form in the present tense. So sometimes the question comes up: how do you identify we're using the past or the present tense? It all depends on the context and the message you're kind of trying to convey. All right. So the tu form is aste, and then we have vosotros, which is astais. I, okay? And then here on the bottom, el, ella, usted, we have o. This is why the accents are so incredibly important. Because if you don't put the accent mark on the o, it's as if it's the singular first person form, the yo form. And if you're talking about el, ella, or usted, you want to make sure you put the accent on there so they know that it's in the third person singular. Now, for vosotros, or ellos, ellas, ustedes, it's Aaron. Okay? Now let's look at the ER and IR verbs, all right? For the ER, IR verbs, the yo form is E. So I wanted to write, okay? E, okay, with an accent. And, the tu form is iste.
Yay! Need to come in too, my friend.
And then el, ella, usted is io. The accent goes over the o, okay? And then the nosotros form is imos. It's kind of like the IR verbs are just dominating over here. And then we have estáis for vosotros. And then for the last one, we have ieron. Now, this whole chart that you're seeing right here, you're going to want to create it just like this. We're going to add on to it a little bit later. Okay? So, but this gives you a nice little visual that you can use to embody what is the preterite tense. So you can, whenever you're taking a test or something, or just trying to remember what it looks like and what are the verb endings, you just can visualize this chart, okay? So I recommend that you memorize it, that you do it like 7 times, rewriting it, so then you understand what are the endings for the preterite tense, okay? Okay, we're going to talk about the big four. Now going back, you notice that the big four are over here underneath in the irregulars, okay? Because there's certain irregulars, they have a pattern, okay? They follow a mold, whereas the big four, they follow no pattern. Okay, so we call them the big four because there's only 4 verbs that are extremely irregular. They follow their own rules. So let's take a look and see which ones are those. All right, so the big 4 verbs. The first 2 we're going to look at actually have the same verb endings. It is ir, which is to go. And then we have ser, which means to be. Okay, and we call these your FU verbs, okay, and the reason why is because they both carry the same exact chart. Okay, so I'm just going to do it just like that, all right? So for example, yo is fui. Now remember, there's no accents on this, all right? Tú fuiste, and then nosotros is fuimos. You can see the pattern, F-U-I, right? Okay, and then we have fuisteis. Okay, now this is where it gets just a little bit different in the el, ella, usted form and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. Okay, that I is going to change to an E, so it becomes fueron. Oh, let me go back. mess that up. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, it's fue. Okay, and then it's fueron. Okay, you can see where that E comes into play here. So make sure you practice your spelling. Do this several times so you can get it down pat. Okay. Now the other two verbs that we're going to look at is dar. We kind of pair them up because they share the same verb endings and they kind of do the same thing, just like ir and ser. They're the FU verbs. Dar means to give. I'm sure you already know that. And then ver means to see. And if you notice, what happens is that your most irregular verbs are the ones that are the most common. To go, to be, to give, to see. Those are the ones that we use most often. So let's take a look at the verb dar. Now, dar and ver we put together because they have the same verb endings. The only thing that's going to change is the V. So regardless of the fact that this is an AR verb, it's irregular. All right? It's not going to have AR verb endings. So let's take a look. I'm going to draw the chart that we normally do. I'm going to do it for both of them. Okay. Yo, the yo form is the. Another thing you'll notice with these ones down here is they are the IR, ER verb endings without accents. See what I mean? So here we have, like the yo form is the, and then here we have the I, right? But there's no accent here for the big four, okay? Especially for these ones right here, okay? So, tú, can you imagine what it's going to be? Diste. Él, usted, dio. No accents because it's underneath that bar. It's one of the irregulars. Nosotros dimos. Vosotros distais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes dieron. Now, ver is going to be the same. The only thing that's going to change is the first letter in the word. So, for example, it's going to be vi. Vimos. This is why we pair them up. Viste. Vistais. Vio. No accent. And vieron. Okay. Let me erase that. It looks really horrible. All right. Let's try it again. That's better. Okay, vieron. So these are what we call our big four because they're completely irregular. They follow no pattern. Dar, okay, is going to have the same verb endings as the verb ver, all right, regardless of the fact that it's an AR verb. So let's take a look at our irregular verbs. We've just talked about our ER, IR verbs. We've talked about the big four. Okay, they're irregulars. Now these ones do follow a pattern. They're going to have the same verb endings. And as you notice over here on the side, we have each verb and they have a stem change. Or not really a stem change, but they have an irregular stem. Meaning that when they put them in the preterite tense, they're going to have these they're going to form this. Estar will change to estuv. Tener changes to tuv. Andar changes to anduv. And you can see the pattern among these. We've categorized them into 4 different pieces. 1, 2, 3, hopefully I can make good numbers, 4, right? So decir changes to dij, D-I-J, traer changes to traj, okay? Poner changes to pus, poder changes to pud, saber changes to sup. Okay, so hacer changes to is, okay? It's going to conserve that sound, and we're going to talk about it. It's kind of special. Querer is quis. Okay, venir is vin, changes to an I, okay? So there we go. These ones all follow the same pattern. They're going to be the same throughout, okay, the conjugations. So, for example, the irregular verb endings, as we can see from the previous chart, what I have are these little arrows right here, okay? The reason why I put them there is because we have some of the AR verb endings were shared with to form the irregulars, and the same thing with the IR verbs. So let's take a look, okay? So first of all, from the AR verbs, we're going to put it in yellow. The AR verbs contributed A. And then they also contributed O, but if you notice, they don't carry an accent. Now, I'm going to change the color, and we're going to put it in white, okay? The rest of them come from the IR, ER verb endings. We have iste, imos, estáis, that's an S, and ieron. So how does this work? Well, let me show you. For example, if I wanted to say I was in Spanish, we know it's going to be in the yo form, right? And we know we're going to use the verb estar right here, okay, because it's up there. So you say yo, and we know we're going to have an irregular form, estuve, so it becomes estuve, but because it's in the yo form, we're going to use that verb ending, the yo form. Estuve, yo estuve. And it's going to follow suit throughout all of these conjugations. Every single last one of them, that root is going to be estuve. The same thing with tener, andar, poner, poder, saber, hacer, querer, venir, decir, traer. That's what's going to happen. Okay? Later on, we'll do some practices.